Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee of the 18th of February. Sorry. Yeah, 2026. I'll repeat this for the benefit of the record. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee of the 18th of February, 2026. The meeting will be recorded and live streamed by HDC. Members and officers must use desk microphones in order for this to work. Only 2 microphones, in addition to the chairs, can be on at the same time. Mobile phones, members and the public should switch off their phones. Fire exits, there are 2 fire exits, and if we have to use them, the meeting point is at the top end of Mill Hill Car Park. There won't be a practice this evening. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming here. And if we could introduce ourselves so the public knows who we are and our roles, starting perhaps Councillor Austin with yourself and working round.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Johnny Austin, I represent the Fleckney ward.
Councillor Foreman, Welland Ward in Harbour.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Neil Bannister representing Dunton Ward, and I'm here as a substitute for the regular committee member, Councillor Rosita
We will
Page.
come to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Paul Bremner, Logan Ward, and ex-chair of this committee. Councillor John Bateman for the Mr. Ward.
Sarah Hamilton, Democratic Services Officer.
David Gare, chair of this committee and district member for Lutterworth East.
Hi, I'm Leah Mickleborough. I'm the head of Democratic Services, Elections and Monitoring Officer.
I'm Mason, Director of Resources, Section 151.
Ross, head of Financial Services.
Helen Lillington, Director for Grant Thornton. Thank you. Rachel Ashley Cord, Chief Internal Auditor.
And finally, Councillor Peter James, Little Bowden Ward, Market.
Thank you very much, everybody. At the pre-meeting, there was a request from the external auditor that we reverse items 4 and 5 on the agenda. I think I've got that right, Helen?
Yes, so essentially I'd like to take the our audit findings report or our ICT 60 report before we take the auditor's annual report, which is on the VFM. So we'll just reverse the order of those 2 items.
Thank you, Helen. Is everybody quite happy with that? Okay, then we'll proceed. Apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Mrs. Page, who has been substituted by Councillor Bannister. Thank you. Are there any declarations of members' interests? Okay. We'll move on then to the draft minutes of the Audit and Standards Committee of the 29th of October 2025. Is the panel in agreement that these minutes are an accurate record of the meeting and can be signed as a true record? Okay, let's see a show of hands then in favour of that. Yeah, right, everybody in agreement. Okay, so they are a true record of the meeting. I'll just sign those. Yes.
Go back to the minute. There's an action on.
Yeah, we're just on the true record at the moment. Yeah, just can we come back to that in 1 second? I'll just
Sorry, you're probably
finish this. Right. Thank you. Save Sarah chasing me for these when I had not signed them before. Sorry, Councillor Brember. Yes, go on.
I've got my assistant.
You said there's an action.
There's an action, there's no page numbers on the document. It is the last page above urgent, second last page probably, sorry, at the bottom. The chair then invited comments or questions from members, and during the subsequent discussion, it was agreed that a flow chart for the process would be produced. Procedure for handling code of conduct complaints.
It's on page 7 of 48, isn't it?
Yeah. It's for me.
Yes, they believe. Right.
I will confess I haven't quite finished this. I've done a number of other guidance and supporting documents for the process. So things like if somebody's subject to a complaint, they'll now get a 2-page. This is what happens and this is where you can get support if you've been subject to complaint to help people understand. But I haven't quite finished the flowchart yet. Sorry, it will be coming.
I wouldn't worry, there's no timeline.
And was there a second item there, Councillor Bremner? No. Okay. Right, we'll move on then to item 5, approval of the 2024-25 annual governance statement and the annual financial report. Over to you, Helen. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, Chair. No, I think we want to go as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but item 4 covers 2 issues: ISA 260 report and the value for money report. And in that item, Helen would like to do them the other way around. She'd like to address the ISA 260 first and then the value for money report, if that makes sense. Is that okay?
Right, okay. Right.
Okay. So,
Over to you, Helen.
well, I'll do a little bit of a intro. So, yeah, as members will I can see from the report and recall last year, we were disclaimed last year, and unfortunately, we're probably going to be, we are going to be disclaimed again this year. But this year, sorry.
All right, we've got 2 documents, both on page number 1. So can you just say which document we're in?
We're on the headed up external audit, auditor's annual report of the year ended 31st of March 2020. Is that right?
It's the big one.
The big one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are we all on the same page? Yep. Okay. So, are we okay, Helen? Yeah.
Right.
If you're on Seamless, you won't see me.
Yeah, that's all I was just checking.
Yeah.
Hold up. Which one is?
It should be on the item 4, which was the one that came to follow, which was a separate.
Is it? Was it headed up approval of 24 annual governance statement and the annual financial report, or is it headed up external audit or auditor's annual report for the year ended 31st of March 2025 value for money?
We do this through the chair then. So we are now talking about item 4, where we were expecting to talk about item 5.
We are talking about item 5. I think item 4 is the annual auditor's report.
Right.
It's misnamed in the agenda. So it's the annual the audit finding report, the ISA 260.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, it's like.
Item 4 should be the annual auditor's report and not the ISA 260.
Through the chair, please.
Okay.
Right. Can I have a single officer to explain exactly
through
what
chair.
we're about to do, please?
There's through Chair.
Yes.
There's a report headed approval of the 24-25 annual government statement and the annual financial report.
Yep. Item 5.
Can you confirm what page that is on the supplemental agenda?
It's on the supplementary agenda.
Yeah.
I don't have a page because I have it as a separate report of CMIS.
Page 63. Yeah, sorry, on page 63. So either in the hard copy paper, or if you are referring to the document that was emailed, that would say items 4 and 5, and again, it's page 63.
Has everyone found it? I can pop round and check.
On
Right.
page 63.
Page 63 of the brick, yeah.
Yeah. Are all councillors quite happy for us to continue? Okay. Over to you, Clyde.
Okay, so through you, Chair. So what we have in front of us is basically the accounts, the governance statement, and the auditor's commentary on those statements, which they term as their audit findings ISA 260 report. As we all know, we've been through a very challenging 12 months, probably a bit longer than that, and we started from a very, very low position. Bit of a recap. This time last year in the finance team, there were virtually no technical accountants in the team whatsoever. We were full of interims. The team had left. And over this last year, we've been building that team back up. And what's been clearly established is that there were some significant issues with various parts of the accounts processes themselves, but the system as well. Not so much the general ledger part of the system, but more around debtors and creditors. And one of the major issues we've had is around bank reconciliation as well. So over this last year, the team have been built back up, and we've got Sean, and he's leading this. We've had quite a few interims in the process, and we still have a couple on our books supporting us through some very highly technical parts of accounts closure. And it has been difficult. It has felt like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and we've kept the committee up to date on progress, and it has been challenging, I must admit. The biggest concern, there were 4 major issues. The biggest one, of course, is the bank rec. We have, as far as we're aware, we reconciled the 24-25 bank reconciliation. The auditors have still got to go through that fine detail, but we know where the transactions are. We've got it wrecked within 27k. But there is still some from the prior year that we've got to sort out, and the team have a deadline at the end of March to have that sorted. And then we've got to do 25-26. I don't want to come across as sounding a bit flippant about it, because I'm not at all, and it has been a concern for me for a long while, and the team are working night and day effectively, they have been for the best part of a year to get this sorted. We will be automating a lot of the bank reconciliation between by the end of this audit period, hopefully by June, and that a lot of the transactions that were causing a problem with the bank rec was around the debtors. The way the debtor system was working, a lot of that has been sorted now. We've worked with the provider, and we've now, the second and third issues was around debtors and creditors, and we now have a list, and that has been quite painful to get to, but it was produced quite late in the process, which meant some of the you would have expected normal procedures to have vetted that list before it went to the auditors, weren't as done as fastidious as they could have been, but we were just bang up to the deadline. So this is in sort of late December, early January. And then capital, the auditors found that what we were doing with capital was not good. That area we have completely sorted out. There's a couple of little things that have come up since that the team are currently working on. It's nowhere near as significant as what it was. So, I mean, I think it was probably say fair to good progress has been made. We're in as good a position as you possibly could be considering where we were. It has come down to resourcing. it has been difficult to get experienced, qualified staff in the door. We now have that team and they are working night and day to pull it off. If I'm perfectly honest, I'm surprised we're still holding on to Sean and a few others because there were times where it was really difficult. And I can only thank them for doing that. But it all seems a bit after the horse has bolted, really. But we've just got to keep plugging away at it. Of course, as life happens, you know, these were the big strategic issues. And as the auditors sort of sort those out, they will find other things. And that's just inevitable. So what we are putting in place at the minute is a completely new set of working papers and reconciliation processes to make sure that without sounding too technical, but the trial balance that we pull on, which we all have for our own bank account, we know what a trial balance is. It comes to zero. It always comes to zero, but we're making it more forensically open, so you can sort of see individual transactions more easily. As I say, that then will be mapped through to the statement of accounts, so we will have a complete process. Never had that here, not since this new system's been in place. We will have a completely new set of working papers, and there will be a extremely tight process of how they will be signed off, hoping that when we get the working papers pulled together, we will be able to have a full set, understand where the base numbers work through to the statements with due evidence supporting each of those transactions. So, giving you a bit of a potted history of where we've come from. It feels we've bust the back of it, but we've got to get the bank rec sorted. That is the real pain at the minute. That has to be bottomed out. The other things are as important, but it is a fundamental control and we have to sort it. Now, when you hear we haven't got a bank rec, it is a fundamental control, and it certainly is Grant Thornton's major concern and worry. But there are other things and processes and practices we have in place that ensure that we're not just letting money fly out the door, such as we have good controls around how we pay for things. We have purchase ordering systems that have the appropriate delegations of approvals. We have appropriate processes around getting income in. So if you look at the whole framework, it is working. It's just that the reconciliation of the cash bit we need to bottom out. Okay. I think I've probably said enough for the minute. I hope that sort of set the scene. I'll pass over to, or unless any members have got any questions for me at this point in time, before we pass to Helen. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive.
Does your
Councillor Bremley, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask. Does your paper stretch to the annual report as well, page 77? And then on, seem to be in the same branch of.
Yeah, it goes through to the ISA 260. Yeah.
Yeah, just a wee comment, and a more substantive one. On 77, I wasn't absolutely sure that's the right numbers for 2025. It might be worth checking. I'm not really sure. I'm just saying it might be worth checking that.
It's the political.
Yeah.
It's the political balance as at 31st of March 2025. We know it's changed a lot since, but we can try and trace back.
I would just not.
Yeah, we'll double check.
More substantive is on page 111. Uncertainties, and you mentioned debtors. As of the 31st of March, Harbour District Council had a balance of sundry debtors of 3.6 million. Do you feel comfortable with that number of debt?
Well, we'd always like no debt, of course, but debt is managed, and some services do have more debt than others. I mean, Sean can provide the detail on that if you'd like to do that. We do have a tight control over our debt, but I can let Sean answer a bit more substantively if he.
Right, over to you, Sean. We'll do this through the chair, please.
So I've since I came in, we have a new debt policy in place. We have new processes, and the amount from that point has come down. I think I was given the figure earlier today, but I don't have it to hand up for it. But one of the key issues for the figure at that point was that it related to the system as it was, and we were still trying to fix the system at that point. So at that point, I don't know if the debt was being chased as much as it would have been. It was about 5 days of me being into the job. So I'm not totally sure what all of the processes were at that point. But I think while we were trying to fix the system, the recovery point wasn't being undertaken as heavily as it is now.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Brennan.
Chair, through you. Would it be possible to have not now, but just email the current debt figure? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bob, for what you've said so far. Am I to understand that it's a bit like all roads lead to Rome? Is the bank reconciliation and being able to do that the base point for all other areas? Because it seems to be mentioned all the way through, and more to the point, it seems to be that it's been over a year since the last results, which couldn't be signed off because we couldn't do a bank reconciliation. We're a year on and we still can't do a bank. So then I saw in here that you said you were hoping to have that done by the end of March this year, and then being able to bring the next one into June. How realistic is that? Thank you.
So, yeah, what we concentrated on over the last 12 months was getting the 24-25 bank rec sorted. Okay. So if you can just think of a timeline, we've got 24-25. There's a bit before that, well, this side for you, a bit before that, which is 23-24, and there's about 4 months, I think 5 months of that need finalising off, and that's being worked on at the minute, and I've directed that needs to be done by the end of March. Okay, so then we will have a continuous story all the way through to March 25. Okay, we've then got to do the 25-26 numbers. Now, a lot of the issues that was in 24-25 was around the way the debtors system was processing stuff. There was lots of massive debits and credits going through it. It was automatically generating them. It wasn't automatically generating debt. They were just contra entries to stuff that was going in, and that's all had to be cleared out. Okay, and that was a huge task. Okay, there was a little bit of that still left in the first sort of 6 weeks of 20. I'll get the years wrong, 25-26, but nowhere near to the magnitude that it was for 24-25. So we are expecting the 25-26 bank rec to be a lot easier and more straightforward. Okay, now I have directed, I hate using that phrase, but that will be done by the end of June. Okay, if we don't have a challenging target, it's going to, we might as well just say whenever then. I can't do that because Helen from GT is pushing for person, quite rightly so as well. Okay, so we have to do this. Now, this isn't going to be done for free. This is what members need to understand. This is because there wasn't investment at the start. We're now having to play catch up. Okay, and we're going to automate a lot of that process. So all the manual transactions that Sean and his team have been doing, we're going to be trying to take a lot of that out by it being automated. Okay, so it is adventurous, but we think it's realistic. Okay, and there are ongoing progress meetings about how this has been, how it's progressing, and I will keep committee informed as we go forward. So go back to the first part of your question, though, Councillor. Everything goes to Rome, everything goes to bank rec, it jolly well does. Okay, this has to be done, all right? come hell or high water, and it will be done. We will get there. All right.
And just to follow up on that, sorry, Chair, just to follow up on that, how much is the issues that we're experiencing down to the fact that we are utilising the bank account for obviously HDCS Limited as well as the Harbour District Council Authority banking, and how much is that is interfering being able to carry out that work?
Through you, Chair. Not a lot. The transactions through HDCS are very small, and compared to what's going through for the rest of the council. When the system was put in, the intention was to have a separate company within the same system. That didn't get done, and there was going to be a separate bank account at the time, but then the team left. Okay, so that part of the process never got completed. Right, that is going to be looked at in the new financial year to make that split. Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Right. Councillor James. Use your microphone, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Clive, really. I'm just trying to get my head around an overview on all of this, and if I say something wrong, you'll tell me, Clive, right? This sort of problem was identified towards the end of 23-24. Is that correct?
For those accounts for 23-24, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then we've been working in great detail on the 24-25 account.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're not quite completed that. So it will impact on the 25-26 account in some way. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I've got that sort of overview. And the reasons some of this has come about, I've got the IT, I mean, they've got a new IT system now. So has that been a problem to us? Has that caused difficulties? We've talked about staff shortages before, and we've recruited more staff. So do we think we've resolved that staffing problem? There are issues over capital, I think I'll explain. Are we confident that the section 106 monies are where we should be? Because we know how important that is if we don't deliver on that. So are we comfortable about that? And also the depreciation of assets. We spoke in another meeting about buying refuse freighters and things like that will depreciate massively.
Yeah.
And have we got a hand on the depreciation of assets? Maybe there's an increase on some building assets, I don't know. And just finally, am I right in thinking that we were generally working all the ledgers and everything on manual systems to a great extent? We bring in the new IT system, which maybe have some problems, or maybe there's problems to resolve now. I'm just trying to get an overview of it. Have we done enough now? I know we're still dealing with the backlog we've got, dealing through the 24-25, but do we feel confident now that we've got the systems in place and we've got the staff in place, and we manage our capital and our 106 and the depreciation? Because all of that lot goes to build up an accurate account, isn't it?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Sean, do you want to take that? Or
No,
all right. Okay.
It's a bit mine. Go to Sean in a minute. Right. So the system we had before was literally it was very clunky, very old fashioned. It hadn't been updated for a number of years, but it did what it did on the tin. And so we put in this new system that was meant to bring with it a lot of efficiency, and it has in a number of ways. Okay, the general ledger is fine. It does what it's supposed to do. The issue around debtors and creditors was that we've established since that the system was the bolting together of two other elements that this company had, and it wasn't working as efficiently as it could. Now, it could raise debt and it could post that debt, but it was doing it was creating lots of automated transactions in between, which netted themselves off, but they were post to the ledger, so it made it really complicated. That has been sorted out. And we now can pull off a debtors list that gives us a defined debt at a particular point in time. Okay. Around capital, and you were talking about depreciation, that is a bit of a manual exercise because there are systems out there that can do the capital. We don't have that. We have a manual fixed asset register which is on a spreadsheet, and the capital accountant does that work, and they will account for depreciation. Now, we don't do depreciation in local government. We apply depreciation, we then reverse it out. Because if we left it in, it would be a cost to the council taxpayer. That's the simplest way to put it, okay? So it does sound a little bit odd, but that's what we have to do. And the key issue on that is, are we depreciating our assets in the right way? That was one of the little things that came up towards the end. We thought we had sorted out the way this was done. There was a couple of assets where the auditors came back. We felt 11th hour-ish, but we've sorted it out. We've done a bit of work since, yet to talk to Grant Thornton about around that. But that will just mean we will just have to manually go in and change some of the split of some of the assets and how they're depreciated. The key issue around what we charge for depreciation is in the budget. Now, when you see the budget on Monday night, you will see a line for capital financing, okay? And that is effectively the revenue charge for those assets, okay? So an asset will have a particular life. That asset is divided by that economic life, and that becomes the actual charge to revenue for that asset. That goes after the capital adjustment account as the charge to pay back that internal borrowing, if that makes sense. That is being done, but from a technical accounting point of view, they don't completely marry up because it depends when you do your capital work. So you might have a plan to do it like this and implement A, B, and C in a certain time, but you might only do A because B and C might slip. So when you do the accounts closure, you can end up with a bit of a different number, but that's just life. So the system's okay. We've got a lot more confidence in it now than what we did have. We've just had a systems health check on it. There are some things that we need to do, but it's not fundamental that we can't rely on it. It can produce what we need it to produce now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Happy with that, Councillor James?
Yeah. Just sort of recapping on it then. So the 23-24 account, are we all confident that that one is accurate in terms of our income and expenditure and our reserve account? That are we confident 23-24?
Through you, Chair.
Yes, absolutely.
So on the 23-24, what we've got to do is got to finish the bank rec off for that period of time. Okay. Now I'm sure at some point the auditors want to go back and test some of those transactions that will be in 23-24. Okay, but that's a story for another time. We've got to now close 25-26 and sort out some of the residual stuff that's hanging over in 24-25 to start building back, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I understand that. So and obviously there's still work going on with 24-25.
Yeah.
So and you'll soon be starting 25-26.
Yeah.
So are we working towards a conclusion on 25-26? What, September, October?
Well, no, we will have the accounts done by the end of June. If I don't, Helen will be throwing a big hammer at me.
Okay, that's fine.
So the accounts will be produced by the end of June.
So when we get to the end of June, the errors or whatever that may be, increases, decreases have gone on over the previous 2 years. We expect to have it all corrected.
Well, I have to manage your expectation through you, Chair. I have to manage your expectation. We will do our utmost to make sure that the working papers that we produce will be as accurate as they can be. Okay, so where before, and going back a number of years, we produced a working paper and that was given. Okay, we are now going to basically stress test those working papers as well. So if it has a list of transactions in it, yeah, we will pick our own sample of those transactions to make sure that they're right. Okay, we're going to stress test it, right? We didn't have that last year. There was not the time or resources to be able to do it, but we're going to do it this year. Okay, now some transactions that are in the accounts are literally fed to us. So, for example, stuff around pensions. Okay, we get a report from the actuary, they tell us what journals we need to do. That is quite self-explanatory. As long as we follow the recipe that we're being given by the actuary, it should be there. Okay, the auditors will go off and test it, and they will look at it and make sure the assumptions are right. But that's what we will do. But things such as debtors and creditors list ran out the 31st of March and then ran again on the 1st of April to make the vote. But they're the same, so nothing's jumped overnight effectively, and that things are in the right year. We will pick our own sample. Okay? And that sample will have its own evidence base that will be in those work papers to demonstrate to the auditors that we haven't just taken it and gone, yeah, it's fine. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just one last point, Chair.
And
And that is,
If you've
so
got-
sometime later on this year, we will be in the most accurate position we think we can be in, really. So just one last question, two questions. Do you feel that the IT system is working correctly? And do you feel, Clive,
Councillor
you've
James,
got
I
the
hate
right
to interrupt
staffing
you.
level? You've got the right staffing level?
Um,
Get us on a good track.
Can we just deal with the IT system? Is it working correctly? Thank you. There are any other questions, Councillor James? Can we save them till the end of the meeting? I think you've had a considerable amount of time there and expertise. I've got two other people who wish to speak. Councillor Bremner.
Just some clarity.
Sorry.
On page 234. Is that? And then from page 224. On those two pages, on page 234, the council has invested 150k in additional resource. I guess that's what you talked about. It's just that it's highlighted again on page 234. That's not additional, that's just a repeat of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was a little bit slightly concerned and wanted some explanation of this. On page 223, at the top, a company has been commissioned in 24-25 to create a dashboard. Is that ongoing or is that stopped or? So on the top of page 223. So am I 223? 223.
Yeah. Right, there we go. Yeah.
It's on
Is this the AGS?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, so
the
yes,
AG.
so-
You need your microphone on,
Your
Clive.
papers are all messed up. Can I just borrow them?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Okay.
So. Which one is it? This one here.
Yeah, the one at the top.
Yeah, so this is Pentana. So this is Pentana. And we use the company to sort of start producing a demographic database. It is still there, it's still available. And as far as I know, it is an active piece of an active part of Pentana that you can use routinely if you want to.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
That's fine.
You're quite happy with that,
Yeah.
Councillor Bremner? Thank you. Right. I'll come back to you. Councillor Austin. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one more question. I noticed from the executive summary that there's a significant reference made to not getting information to the auditors on time, so they're unable to do the work. Do we have an assurance that we are going to get them information on time so they can do the work?
Helen, thank you. Come in there.
Through you, Chair. I'm just conscious that we've heard quite a lot from officers about the audit findings report, which is my report as the external auditor.
Yeah.
So I don't know if councillors would probably find it more helpful if I do my overview from an independent point of view of what I think the situation is. And then if we ask some further questions, I think you might find that more useful.
Okay.
And I can probably pick up that point if we go, if that's okay, Councillor Austin. So the first report I wanted to talk about was what we call our ICT 60 report, is our audit findings report, and that is the report that talks about the financial statements. Now, you have heard a lot about the issues that we have had. From the outset, I want to remind you all that my job as an auditor, by its very nature, is backward looking. So what I am talking about now are the financial statements that relate to 24-25, which I appreciate are some time ago. What I will reflect on is exactly as Clive has said, is that 24 has been a challenging year. You will know that 23-24, the audit of that was a challenging year. And to pick up previous councillors' points, 23-24 had a fully disclaimed audit opinion. What that means is that as an external auditor, I effectively gave you no assurance at all over the balances within those accounts, because I could not get enough information to be assured that they were materially correct by the legal backstop date at the end of February. So that is the first point. We move through into 24-25, and for all of the reasons that Clive has outlined, we are in a very similar position in 24-25. The opinion I will give on your 24-25 financial statements, again, will be a fully disclaimed audit opinion, where I am giving you no assurance on the balances within those 24-25 accounts. That is not to say we have not made progress from the previous year. We have worked incredibly hard with the finance team. There has been a lot of effort from both the audit team and the finance team to get to a better position. It is fair to say that you will see that from the fact that you published a set of accounts on the 26th of August. We had another set of accounts at the beginning of October, which had moved quite significantly. And then the set of accounts that you have in front of you are materially different again. That represents the ongoing work that has happened during the course of the audit. We have worked incredibly hard to focus on the areas to enable you to move forward and keep going to a position where at some point in the future, and I'm not going to say that is 25-26, at some point in the future, you will be able to regain assurance and get back to a place where you have a clean audit opinion. In terms of 24-25, there are things that have improved upon, definitely, and Clive referenced the PPE. For those of you who sat around the table last year, you will know I had really significant concerns about the asset register and the way that that was maintained. We've worked on that, and we are much more confident that that is now fit for purpose and is in a place that enables you to know what assets you've got, for us to be able to audit that. As Clive has also articulated, what that means is when it's in a position where we can audit it, we will audit it, and because we're auditors, we will find, there will be questions and there will things that we will find. Those are not insurmountable, and we have made recommendations to enable us to move forward on that in 25-26. The most fundamental concern, and we've talked about it a lot already, but I cannot reiterate this enough, is the bank reconciliation. It is the absolute cornerstone of accounting and auditing. Without that, it is very hard to say that everything else that fits around it is correct. That is by far my biggest concern. And it is the reason you've got a key recommendation in your value for money conclusion. It is the reason why I have discussed potentially using my statutory powers and giving you a statutory recommendation, because I consider it that significant. That is not something I do lightly. For the moment, and I've been really careful with my words, I am assured that there are mechanisms in place to get you back to where you need to get to. As part of our interim audit in April, I will look at that. And if the necessary progress has been made, that's great. If not, I will reconsider that loop in terms of my statutory powers. And that's a really important point for me to reiterate. That bank reconciliation is fundamental to everything. In terms of some of the other things that we've talked about, yes, debtors and creditors, there were some significant issues that we raised last year. It took a lot longer to get those resolved than I think anybody anticipated. We did get a listing. It was very late. We have done some testing around that. You will see from the report that because we've tested things, we've found issues, which again enables you to move forward. I will just highlight, we've got the same issue on the group as we had last year, and I think we've touched on that. Also worth pointing out that there are areas that we have audited this year that we didn't audit last year. So we were provided with probably more information in terms of the sample items and things that we've selected for testing this year than last year. So it is a step forward. It's just not a step far enough for me to be able to confidently say we've got everything we need. So the audit has very much focused in on where has progress been made, what are the really big things that you need to sort to give yourself the right basis for 25-26. Our recommendations are focused really on that trajectory and helping you move forward. So I think that probably sort of sums up where we've got to in terms of the audit. It doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, this year will be the second year of a fully disclaimed audit opinion. I'm going to pause before I talk about VFM because I think there's quite a lot there in terms of the financial statements. So I'm happy to take questions through you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Bremner. Okay.
What concerns me slightly, and I know what Clive has said, 2 years disclaimed, we are all working towards, unless there's a massive U-turn on LGR. You've had assurances that something would be resolved before, and it has not been. So that makes me think that not the current team, but a team in the past made some fundamental errors. They may no longer be with this council, but you talked about statutory responsibility for yourself. They have professional responsibility, and they are professional bodies. I'm sorry, but someone has to take responsibility for what has happened with this accounting series of non-disclaimed. Somewhere down the line, something went fundamentally wrong with people in charge, people in management. I'm sorry, but we are dealing with, or Clive and his team, and you are dealing with the mess that had been created previously. So I 1 year might be careless, 2 years.
Just 1 second. Right. Okay. Okay, Clive, go on.
So yeah, and I think you make a very, very valid point there, Councillor Bremner. I always said this time last year, 24-25 will be the year where we do our best to try and get back to where we can. It has been really hard. I can't underline it enough. And it just has. But we are now in a far better position than what we were last year. Sean and his team know, and we'll have practices in place. They will be running that debtors report on the 31st of March. They will be running it on the 1st of April to make sure it's the same. That was never done before. A whole new set of, as I say, work papers will be produced, and that is key to this. Okay, that you have good, solid working papers that you can clearly go through. I mean, I'm old-fashioned in my brain when it comes to this, that literally if you're putting a reference number and a number in there, that means something. You can track it back to something, okay? You know, if you're putting in a funny number, which I call them, when you have to put depreciate in, and then you have to reverse it out, you could substantiate why you're putting that estimate in, what it's based on. Wasn't been done before.
Really fast.
Yeah, yes.
These bank reconciliations, are they in boxes of paper? Or are they on hard drives and searchable? That's all.
Through it's electronic. It's electronic. It is an electronic process.
Just for can we, Councillor Bateman, you were going to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask the external auditor that, yes, I understand what you're saying. 23-24 was a mess. 24-25 was slightly better, but still a mess. 25-26, we're looking as though we're actually making progress. So while we all sit here and it sounds like doom and gloom, I think it's fair to say, from what I've heard, that the staff, the officers and the teams are learning from the errors of 23-24, 24-25 to get us somewhere back to a decent outcome for 25-26 or maybe 26-27, who knows. But the other question I'd very much like to ask is what are the consequences for having a disclaimed opinion on your accounts? What are the consequences for the council? We may have asked it before, but I can't remember. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and as an auditor, I'm never going to sit here and say, yeah, everything looks fine for 25-26, because the proof of the pudding is very much in the eating. What I will say is this year, the collaboration between the audit team and the finance team has been significantly improved from the year before. We've had some really open and constructive conversations, which has been required to, we're in a, I think 23-24 really highlighted that there were a number of fundamental things that we really needed to lay out on the table and needed to be fixed, and people needed to understand. And as we've gone through 24-25, we've taken exactly that same approach. And you need to work through those to have that same basis as we move through into 25-26. And those constructive conversations have continued. And I think that stands us in good stead. I've also seen the early drafts of the plans for 25-26, so have some confidence that things are going to be different. What you will also see this year, and you'll probably remember last year we started the planning back, we didn't produce the plan until July. We didn't do any interim work because of the issues in 23-24 carrying on so late. For 25-26, I'm going to look at Sean and go, we're already doing 25-26 planning. We already have a plan in place to do a chunk of work in April around interim to really get under are the things that you told us are going to be in place, so we should have some earlier assurance around that. And because of the conversations we've had during 24-25, we should get much more right first time in terms of 25-26. Will that enable us to regain assurance and get you back to a clean opinion in 25, 26? I am going to say that is hugely unlikely just because of the actual timescales involved. In terms of your second question, in terms of what is the consequence of a disclaimed opinion, there are a lot of them about. Lots and lots and lots of them about. You are not alone in having disclaimed opinion. It is a sector-wide issue. The whole reason it has come about is because there were so many open audit opinions that went back years and years and years. The government decided that the way to deal with that was to put in an imposed legal statutory backlog. So I have to issue an opinion by the end of November, as it happens this year. It was the end of by the end of February. It's the end of February last year. So I have to issue that. As an auditor, if I do not have the level of assurance I need to sign an opinion that says everything is materially correct, the other opinion I sign is a disclaimed opinion. So MHCLG have signalled very, very clearly to the audit sector they are expecting us to help councils regain assurance and get back to a clean opinion. There are some authorities this year who have previously been part of the backstop disclaimer who have actually gone through and done what they need to do to regain assurance over prior years and get back to a clean opinion this year. That is not an easy task, and it should not be underestimated, and it depends why you've had disclaimed opinions in previous years. So there is work to be done around that. But in terms of, is there an actual consequence? Not really, but MHCLG will start to look very carefully at those authorities that are not on the right road to regaining assurance.
Thank you, Helen. Right, okay. Councillor Austin.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. As far as recommendations go, and I looked obviously going through this, there's 11 recommendations moving forward. But you also stated in your executive summary that 57% of recommendations from the previous year have been taken up, which means 43% haven't. So as far as recommendations go, is that the next step away from a statutory notice from your point of view on looking at the accounts? Or is it, they're not, I can't see them being optional. I think it's something which needs to actually be done and covered, but a recommendation is a softer way of saying, look, before I take out a statutory notice on yourself, I would recommend that you do this. And if that's the case, how close are we to being able to fulfill the other 43% that we haven't in order to get this right? And I appreciate it doesn't happen overnight. Thank you.
So let me just make my position really clear on the statutory recommendations, because I think that's really important. So statutory recommendations are a recommendation that I make using my statutory powers, which means that I am raising that to a level where I ask the council to consider those recommendations within a 30-day time window. It's also copied into MHCLG. So it's not something we do lightly. I only ever do it over issues where I am really concerned. The issue that would revolve around that is the ability for the council to get up to date with their bank reconciliations and to put in those robust processes around producing your financial statements for 25, 26, because that is the key driver. Those are the ones that need to be the absolute prime focus. All the other recommendations we've talked about, yes, they're important. Not achieving those is not going to impact on the potential statutory recommendations. It is the bank rec and having those processes in place to produce the accounts for 25, 26 in a timely way. Those are the key ones. Yes, the others are important, and you need to put in place the mechanisms to get those right, but those are the primary focus ones.
Okay, Clive, you want to come in there?
Yeah, thank you. well, I've reiterated the point around bank rec and the timescales and the process we will have in place to make sure that moving from the trial balance to the statement of accounts, how that maps across, that will be done and has been done for the most recent statements that are in the accounts. However, Helen very nicely says about the other recommendations. I will be brave enough to say that the working papers that I will expect to be produced by the finance team this time around, okay, we will be able to map why that number is in those statement of accounts, that it's based on evidence, okay, and why we made the decision that we did on the treatment of that number, okay. That's how I've always done it since I've been doing this since I was in short trousers. It then comes down to a discussion between the finance of the organisation and the auditor on the interpretation of what you've done against the code of practice. Okay, and some you win and some you lose. Okay, and if you lose, you make the adjustment with the auditor as they would like to see it. And sometimes you win. And I have won a few, not many, but I have won a few. The auditor goes, yeah, all right, I'll give you that. Okay. But the primary thing here is that the number that's in the trial balance, I can verify it. I know what it is. I know how it moves to here and what that number is. And then I have a trail of it. And I will be expecting the finance team to be pulling that together in that way. Okay. So you can then have assurance that, okay, there might be a few issues with the numbers in 25, 26, and it'll be, but it primarily be down to interpretation and not the fact that we can't trust the number that's in there. Okay. But the primary thing is the bank rec. Okay. And what I need members to understand is I believe we need more resource because it's turning into a harder job. I will get that resource in. Okay. I will just do it. Okay. Because it has to be done. Right. There's no get out of jail free card here. This is really hard slog and you need good staff with experience to be able to do it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that was my main focus here. Have you got enough people to expedite this?
Yes.
Chair. At this point in time, I am pretty confident we have the staff. Sean is learning and he's getting to grips with it. We have a very highly experienced technical accountant who has done the debtors work, capital work. We are not letting her go. She's an interim. She isn't cheap, but we're not letting her go because we need that. We have a specialist person working with us who knows our system as it happens, and she has built a bank rec process for another local authority that has worked. Okay, so at this point in time, yes, I think we have what we need, but if alarm bells start going in my head, I won't hesitate. Now that does cost money, but I'm afraid that's my job. That's what comes with the 151 responsibility. I'm afraid producing these accounts has to be done. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor James.
Thank you. Just looking on
Yes.
page 254 onwards, the overview of audit risks. It's quite interesting that. Could we just explain the what we mean by the management override of controls, which potentially is significant?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought,
Okay, right, we'll leave that there, please.
We're not on
Councillor
that page.
Bannister, you've been extremely patient.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to take us back then to the discussions we were having on the disclaimed opinion that was declared on the 23-24 accounts and the high probability of the disclaimed opinion for the 24-25 accounts. And clearly reading the summary of the report and the content, one was very discouraged about the fact that the council was in that position. Having said that, and listening to Clive in particular and Helen, I am encouraged that the work to address the issues is in hand. And there is a time scale that is established to try and resolve those issues. If I could ask Helen just to clarify for me that if the work is completed to your satisfaction, that the 23-24 accounts and the 24-25 accounts no longer need a disclaimed opinion, and that you can give assurance. Are you able to backdate and say, well, the work's now being done, I can give that assurance, or once a disclaimed opinion is given, that ship has sailed? That's my first question.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, it's a tricky one. This one is right. So once I issue an opinion on a year of account, there is no going back on that. So 23-24 will forever be a disclaimed audit opinion. Once you, and I'm going to say the word, hopefully approve the 24-25 accounts, that will enable me to issue a further disclaimed opinion on 24-25. Again, I do not go back on that. 24-25 will be forever disclaimed. What that means, if you play that forward, is the 25-26 accounts have opening balances within them that rely on what has happened previously. Most notably, all those lovely reserves that sit at the bottom of your balance sheet is a makeup of everything that has happened in the preceding years. Now, normally for an audit, you'll have had your opening balances, so prior year's closing balances will have been signed off by the auditor to say, yes, we're really happy with those, so that when we move forward into 25-26, I can start with a degree of confidence knowing that everything was rolled forward from the prior year is right.
Yep.
I will not be able to do that when I look at 25-26 because I don't know whether the balances in 23-24 were right, or for that matter, the balances in 24-25 are right. Okay. What I then can do, and what we continue to do in the sector, and it is what we tried to do for you for 24-25 but didn't quite get there, is we will focus purely on the transactions that have happened in 25-26 and what the closing balances for 25-26 looks like. So the position I am aiming for next year, and I think Clive and the team, we are all aiming for a position, is 25-26 will have a disclaimed opinion on it, but it will be different to the disclaimed opinion I am giving this year, because what I'll be able to say is, actually, I've audited the in-year transactions for 25-26, and I'm comfortable with those. Yeah. But anything that relies on a roll forward from the prior year, I haven't been able to go back and audit those because that requires further audit work. Yeah. So when we talk about regaining assurance, what we're doing is we're doing it almost in small chunks, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So that is the process. So I will never overturn a disclaimed opinion, but what I may be in a position to be able to do is do enough work on those opening balances to say that the closing balances of the year that I'm auditing are now correct. Does that make sense? That's quite a difficult thing to follow.
But we may be on a trajectory to get assurance by 26-27. Okay, well, we're on a trajectory.
LGR.
Yeah, there's also that.
Yeah, I will, through you, Chair, I will, yeah, we're on a trajectory. That's as good as an auditor is going to tell you.
my second,
Just a moment, councillor Bannister, you
I
have
I
another
did have a
question.
second question, and that was in relation to the potential statutory powers that you had, and you gave an explanation about the 30 days notice and so forth. And one hopes that you never get to that position of having to issue. So this is a sort of doom and gloom scenario that you did, and the 30 days came about, and you still didn't get the work done or the indications that would satisfy you. And you say you copy in MHCLG. I appreciate that the disclaim no opinions obviously will have a reputational risk between this council and MHCLG. But clearly, if you go down the statutory powers, that reputational risk increases incrementally. And my colleague, Councillor Bateman, was talking about the consequences. Ultimately, it's the consequence that the council or the finance team is placed into into special measures.
Alan?
The sequence of events you describe is pretty close to what could potentially happen. It needs to be really clear that that is potentially happen. We are a long way off that at the moment. It is fair to say, because of the seriousness of the issues that we've discussed tonight, I have had to consider use of those powers. What is really important to say is I haven't used them.
Okay.
So that's probably the key.
Thank you.
The point will be as we get into April and whether I can see a genuine level of improvement. That is going to be the tipping. That is going to be the tipping point.
Thank you, Helen. Not very far away. Right, we've wandered a little here and come back, Sean, to item 5, because this committee has to approve that report and give you the opportunity to make your comment here.
Thank you, Chair. The key parts of the decision before the committee are to approve the annual financial report and the annual governance statement. So the statement of accounts that is before you is the one that was provided to Audit on the 30th of January. So they didn't have time to do any additional testing on the balances that made up the figures within there. I have a lot more confidence in those figures being true and fair. And we've put a lot of work in this. There have been a lot of sleepless nights, and there are. I think that we're in a much better position now to take this forward. I think one of the issues that has popped up is about the staffing level. I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier was that we did. I think when I started in March 25, we had two members of staff who were permanent. I think we now have a full complement of permanent staff within that technical finance team. We've had them throughout the audit. They have all learned and progressed throughout the audit. They've all taken on the training that Greta Thornton put on to help them understand exactly what the approach is around the papers and how we need to create the working papers going forward. On that basis, we have got the 24-25 accounts to approve. Are there any questions specifically about the annual financial report, including the statement of accounts, or the annual governance statement?
Any questions? We'll move to a vote on that. Okay, can I have somebody to propose that we approve the 24-25 annual financial report? Councillor Austin, somebody second Councillor Austin, seconded. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, right, okay. So it's item 5 complete then. Item 4 coming back to you, Helen.
So we've talked about the financial statements. My other report that was on the agenda was the auditor's annual report, which picks up the second part of my responsibilities. So I have a responsibility to report on value for money. It's important to recognise that that is the arrangements that the authority has in place around value for money, and not my pronouncement on whether I think you are delivering value for money, because those are slightly separate things. We are talking about the arrangements. You will see from the report that we have given you one key recommendation, which has been discussed at length already, so I do not propose to further that, and that's why I wanted to reverse the order of the way I presented my reports. The other areas, there are improvement recommendations around. So you will notice there's an improvement recommendation around the budget setting. There are some improvement recommendations around governance. And there's one improvement recommendation around the 3Es, which is effectively a carry forward from what was there in the prior year. I think the report also touches on stat recs, but again, we've talked a lot around that already, so I don't propose to further that. I think probably what is the most prudent way forward is, if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take them, but I don't think there's anything significant that I needed to present that hasn't been said already, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Helen. Right, questions, councillor Bremner.
Maybe a small thing, but could be impactful if it got all messed up. Page 38. Declaration of gifts and hospitality. The last paragraph, not ensuring that arrangements to declare gifts and hospitality are robust, places members and officers as well as the council at a risk of accusations, inappropriate behaviour and failure to be sufficiently transparent. The one area of this council where there's a lot of interaction with different people is planning, which also has a lot of controversy. And I don't know whether officers and clients go out for lunches or meals or anything like that. But that's exactly the sort of thing, if it reaches a threshold of payment, should be declared. So although it's a small thing, it could be a very important reputational damage if that isn't actually held to account across this council. And our officers are fully aware of that policy. And our managers ensuring that their staff beneath them are fully aware of that policy.
So of course, this is a report that looks at 24-25 year. Actually, since this time, we have now fully implemented that recommendation. So there's online web forms that staff and councillors can use to make any declarations of gifts and hospitality. We have had it used a couple of times and it goes through. So I receive it. I'm notified. We get to comment and whether that should be accepted or not in the first instance. And of course, beyond that, we have codes of practice for both staff and members, which include declarations of gifts and hospitality, as well, and a separate code of practice on planning. And we have communicated that staff. We've done specific workshops in August. I'll be doing a further member briefing in April. It'll be around code of conduct, gifts and hospitality and so on as well. So I'll be doing some reminders then.
Thank you, Liam. Councillor Austin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on the following page, page 39, talking about updating the procurement strategy. Have we actually done that yet? Because obviously the problem is it was 2018 to 21 and the Procurement Act was 2023, which doesn't seem to be in operation. So have we updated that yet?
Chair, we are in the progress of. It's a bit of an issue, but we are sorting procurement out literally as we speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Clive. Any other questions to Helen? Okay, I think we can move on then to item 6. Very patient of you, Rachel. Right, the internal audit.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the latest update on the delivery of your internal audit plan for the current financial year. So there's a copy of the plan for you on page 17 of the pack, page 5 of the first appendix. So this lists all of the audit assignments for this financial year, the status of each of those at the time of producing this report, and the outcome of those which have been finalised. So just to confirm, we're referring back to the original papers now. So yeah, is everyone on the same page? Yes, just to check. Thank you. So as has been noted, there have been some delays on some of the audits, so I've made reference to that. We continue to try to deliver the rest of the plan. We'll obviously report back to you again at the next meeting on those as well. So for those that have been finalised during the last period, we have provided you with the executive summaries of each of those in section 3 of the report from page 15 of the pack, page 3 of the first appendix. So the first was in relation to fixed assets. So this is looking at the council's fixed assets register. As you've already heard this evening, there were some issues identified with this in the previous year, hence we wanted to include some coverage and some assurance for you around the internal controls in this area in this year's internal audit plan. So I'm pleased to say that we were able to note improvements around the fixed asset register, which has also been acknowledged already this evening by external audit. This is around the recording of property, plant and equipment, referred to as PPE, that's already been referenced. So I won't go over the messages that we've also identified some improvements in that area. We're able to see evidence of the valuations and depreciation process that was being applied. We did identify some scope for improvement in relation to increasing some of the information on the fixed asset register, particularly around assigning owners, being clear on some of the further detail, I suppose, around them, particularly things like unique identifiers and serial numbers, where we can identify those as well. And also formalising the verification process so that we have that annual record that owners are assuring us that the assets remain in place and in the condition that we expect. We've also recommended that procedures be documented so that if we do have any changeover in staff in the finance team, we have that continuity and we have evidence that we can take that forward in the changes of any personnel. So on that basis, we've given a moderate assurance for the control environment subject to those improvements being made, a good level on compliance based on the testing that we performed, and a low organisational impact based on those findings. The next on page 16 of the pack, page 4 of the appendix, is around temporary accommodation. So this was looking at the council's processes for placing individuals or families into temporary accommodation where we have a statutory duty to do so. So we looked at a number of areas in relation to temporary accommodation. We were assured on a number of fronts around the regular reviews of placements, making sure that we have recorded visits in place for those who are in those placements, and documented move-on planning as well for those individuals and families. There's also statutory requirements, for example, around placing families into bed and breakfast or paid nightly accommodation where they have children. So we must have a maximum of 6 weeks. No, it must never go over 6 weeks for the statutory requirement. And I'm pleased to say that the maximum stay that we saw for the year that we looked at the data was 8 days. So we were well below that statutory limit. We did identify some areas where there is scope for improving controls and some potential areas of risk. One related to the procurement compliance. So this is an area where it's emergency spend, so it's urgent spend, and each individual placement, it obviously adds up over the year. We were really reassured by the work that the council's already done to try and move away from nightly paid accommodation and invest in its own housing provisions so that it can place individuals and families into our own housing stock rather than rely on that expensive nightly paid accommodation. However, the stock that we have is not going to meet the needs, so we do still have to use nightly paid accommodation to meet all of the requirements. So positive movement in that respect in terms of you moving towards value for money and a further progress in that area. For those where we are procuring placements, we need to make sure we are complying with the council's procurement rules and the Procurement Act. The aggregate spend is increasing and so it's over those thresholds, so we just need to make sure we have an arrangement in place. What we've recommended is looking at things like frameworks and dynamic markets to try and look at the best ways we can explore that under the Procurement Act, but also demonstrate competitive and good value for money. The other area that we highlighted was around documented suitability assessments. So whenever we're placing anyone in these placements, we should make sure that we've considered all of their needs and how they are being met or not by the properties that we've considered. Again, these are quick decisions and we appreciate that we're working to short timescales to try and meet the individual's needs, but to ensure that we've got evidence we have discharged our duties appropriately as a local authority, We have recommended that those suitability assessments be suitably documented in all cases. We've recommended something like a short checklist that would just demonstrate that, so we have that audit trail should we have any challenge or any queries about the decision made in each case. And lastly, just to mention that in the council's strategy, it does also mention that any temporary accommodation that's used will meet the Housing Health and Safety Rating System hazards, which lists 29 different hazards, some of which are covered off by gas safety inspections and electrical installation condition reports, which are had in place for those within the council's stock. But there are also further areas that are not yet covered and not captured within those assessments. So again, we've made some recommendations around how we fulfil that requirement within the strategy. So overall, based on the assessment that we've undertaken, we've given a moderate level of assurance for both the control environment and the compliance at the time of the audit with a medium organisational impact. So just briefly, also within the report is an update on the implementation of actions arising from internal audit reports. So table 2 on page 21 of the pack, page 9 of the appendix provides you with an overview of those. So on the first line, you can see that 15 actions have been implemented since the last update to this committee, but we currently have 22 actions which are overdue, which is unfortunately an increase from the last update when we had 14 actions overdue. That has crept up to 22. And we also have 2 that are of high priority and over 3 months overdue. As usual, in the next table and in the following appendix from page 25 of your pack, you have all of those high and medium overdue actions with the latest update that we have received. So we ask for updates every month, and you will have the latest update that we've had in that table. Just to flag that the 2 high priority over 3 month overdue actions related to bank reconciliations, dare I say, which has been a theme this evening, clearly as concern for both myself and external audit. So we're both tracking that closely, and the other related to the setting of fees and charges in trade waste. So as I say, you've got full details of all of those actions in the following table. And just lastly, there's the latest update on feedback from the work that the internal audit team has delivered on page 22 of your pack. So we've had 3 surveys back on the audits that have been completed, and I'm really pleased that we've got the highest score on each front on those as well. So hopefully that gives the committee some assurance around the quality of the internal audit work as well. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair, on any of the content of the
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. Councillor Bannister.
Thank you for your report, Rachel. Page 3 of the appendix, paragraph 3.14. The physical verification on the fixed asset register, you conclude that paragraph by saying there's no formal established or standardized process in place. Are you working with the appropriate team to see that there will be a formal established and standardized process in place?
Thank you. Rachel.
Yes, so this is something that we have made a recommendation because an action has been agreed. I don't know if officers are able to further, but that I'm happy to follow that up if that's helpful to the state. But yes, it's something to make recommendation.
Right. Councillor James. Oh, right.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I'm just looking at the temporary accommodation issues, reading through that. Where we're moving, it would seem we're moving towards their own properties rather than other accommodation. So presumably we'll have to have, will there be staffing issues relating to our own accommodation? Obviously in hotels there's staff there, but we're going to have staffing issues, and obviously we'll have maintenance costs on the building as well. Another thing that just isn't mentioned here, over the last 2 or 3 years, the fire safety regulations and compliance have increased quite dramatically. And obviously that's a factor that we need to be aware of and make sure we've got compliance there as well.
Thank you. Would anybody want to respond to that? Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So, as members will probably be aware that the council has been undertaking a programme of purchasing properties across the district and actually some outside of the district. If nothing else, to try to minimise the cost of temporary accommodation. And those properties, some we have got cheaply and we've invested in, to enhance them. New processes I understand are in place to make sure that they're compliant. Members will also be aware that we've just completely refurbished the Ploughman's Yard property in the middle of Market Harborough. So there is a lot of activity on the area of garden resources. At this point in time, it's relatively light, but that's because the government effectively pay us the rent from subsidy. So we don't, all the people in temporary accommodation receive benefit, and we get that money directly. So luckily we don't have to go out and collect that sort of rent. But there are ongoing maintenance issues, and there is a planned maintenance programme to make sure those buildings and properties are maintained. And of course, after people come and they leave, there's a process done to go in and review to make sure that those buildings and properties are maintained. And sometimes, some people live in different ways, don't they? And we have to pay a bit of extra money. But at the minute, it is saving us quite a bit.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Right, councillor. So, councillor Foreman.
Thank you, Phil. Under the temporary accommodation one, you said it's noted that no assurance or evidence is sort of safety inspection records from nightly rate TA providers. So with B&Bs and like I don't know, your Premier Inn or whatever, is there not an assumption that they would already tick those boxes because they are operating as businesses anyway? Or is that something that you want the staff to find on top of that?
Through you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that has been the basis on which it's been operating, that there is that assumption that as a hotel, as you say, or a provision, that they would have those arrangements in place. I think it ties in with what we talked about in terms of the procurement process as well, of ideally we need to have that pool of providers that have been appointed through a competitive process. And then we know that they've all given us the right level of assurance. So whether that's through that, whichever means that would be, whether that's through their existing hotel provision, they can just assure us that with a statement that they have all of the relevant expectations and standards that have been met. And then we can safely use them on the basis that we've got those assurances. So I'm hopeful that we can bring those two things together just to formalise that. Hopefully, as you say, it would all be there for some of those larger providers, but we just want to make sure we've got that documented so that we've covered our statutory responsibilities.
Right, thank you, Rachel. Right, councillor Foreman.
Follow up. Thanks. Yeah, I think the framework that you've outlined, I think that's really a good idea, and it probably should have been implemented a long time ago. Question to the officers then is who's going to do that? Is there going to be resources, for that to be done through the procurement team? Or, and you've said about there being problems with the procurement team, is that resolved now?
Leah, right.
I mean, there's the caveat coming that a dynamic purchasing system is not something we ordinarily do and is not very straightforward to set up. We do have a procurement service, Well and Partnership, and it would require their specialist expertise in procurement to establish this type of arrangement. It might be if we do, it's worthwhile investing with other partners too as well, because there will be others that are in exactly the same position. But it's not a quick fix. It would be led by housing, working with the partnership. It could easily take 12 months or so to develop such an arrangement, but it's definitely something we can consider.
Thank you, Leah. Yeah. Happy with that, councillor Foreman? Okay. Right, any other comments on internal audit? Oh, councillor Foreman.
Sorry, it's a separate point. So on the actions that haven't been completed, I just find it a bit concerning that especially the top 5 are over 2 years old. And what is, if any, repercussion to those actions? So if they're not done, why not? And well, we know why not, as these reasons are given, but why isn't something done to make sure they are done? That makes sense.
Okay, Clive, do you want to take that?
Yep, I'll take that. So this is the partnerships, primarily the partnerships audit that was done. And that team, when this audit was done, doesn't sort of exist like it did before. Now, partnerships, and we have a number, are primarily managed by each individual service. So, for example, the Revs and Events Partnership. Sean's our representative on it, and he attends the meetings, and there's 2 members who are actually on the joint committee. So there is governance around a lot of this work is our partnership agreements up to date, stuff like that. Now, that has been challenging. We haven't had anybody in the organisation who could go and do that, okay, because it's dispersed across. So it was this in October last year. Rachel agreed to suspend this recommendations to give us till January to get somebody who could come in on a relatively short-term contract to just review this and get something in place. That is being done literally as we speak. So I am hoping, touch wood, by the time we get to the next audit, there should be some movement on it. Okay. Once the budget is out of the way, I've had a discussion with Rachel only this evening. I am taking these under my wing myself, these audit recommendations. We are going to get to the bottom of this because it's just embarrassing, isn't it, to keep having these rolling and rolling and rolling. So I am going to take it and make sure that the relevant services get this stuff implemented or explain why they can't. And if they can't, discussions are held with Rachel, and Rachel will go through the process of reviewing her recommendation. Does it need to be changed? Because things move on, don't they? Or if it's no longer relevant, things move on, or it will be implemented. Okay. Now, members may want to have a bit of a think about, if we're still here in 6 months' time, what process would you like to see in place if said services do not progress with these recommendations? And there are options you could do. You could ask those relevant directors, heads of service to come and you could question them why. You may want to have a bit of a think about that. You don't have to answer now. You can have a bit of a think over the next few days, and I can follow up. But you may want to have a bit of a think about how you, because some of them are old, and some of them have got a bit long-winded, and they just need to be sorted, don't they? So I am taking under my wing to go get these sorted for you. But I can only push at a door for so much. I can't actually make somebody walk through it. Okay.
Right. Thank you very much, Clive. Councillor Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on that point, please, Clive. I mean, obviously, the latest update, which we're reading here for that particular area, which is due done by the 30th of the night, 2025. It looks like we've got somebody to see, just to estimate how much work needs to be done on it to be able to get us up to speed on it, and then we'll consider the fee, and all. That's what it says to me here. We will then seek further fee estimates rather than actually getting the work done. And I don't see why we're paying somebody to estimate how long it should take. Why can't we just get on with it?
Which one is it, Councillor Austin?
Sorry, it's on page 27 of our booklet, and in the middle there, head of legal services and head of well and procurement, updating the CPRs and the SORP in accordance with the Procurement Act 2023. That was to be done by 09/25, and in October 25, it says, and I quote, an estimate for an external lawyer to work out the total time needed to be able to.
Yeah,
I mean, what?
Order, right? Okay. Are you happy you finished your question? Yes. Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Oh, Leah. Right. Okay.
So appreciating that point and potential sort of fees and things involved, we've been looking at, can we take this forward in a different way? So we've a member of our legal team is shared with another authority. He's actually largely undertaken this work now. I'm hoping it'll go to the Constitution Review Committee in April. So it is moving forward, and we are not paying those significant fees just to have people to tell us what we need to do rather than actually doing it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, right.
Sorry, I just have one final point on these actions. I think it would be more helpful to us in the audit committee to have more up-to-date updates. It's like one updates from July 25 and October 25, and then you're saying, well, actually stuff has happened since then. It doesn't help you or us. I think if we could have updated ones when we come into, we only meet 4 times a year, don't we? So I don't think it's too big an ask.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, with that. Yes, okay. Great, thank you.
Will do.
All right, who's taking that? Right. Right, did you want to say something there, Rachel? Right.
Sorry, I was just going to say that we do request updates every month. So these are obviously the latest updates that we've had, but obviously we'll take that back and prove to CMT that the committee would like to see more updates provided. Okay, thank you.
You're happy with that plan? Right. Thank you very much. Any other comments on item 6 then, the internal audit? Okay, right, we'll move on then, if everybody's comfortable with that, to item 7, update on standards activity. Leah.
Thank you. I appreciate the committee has got quite into things like statement of accounts and so on tonight. And whilst this is important, I hope the report largely speaks for itself. It gives an update to the committee on the type of work we've got going on in terms of code of conduct activity. Of course, our role covers not just districts, but all of the parishes in our area, and we have a few parishes that we oversee as well. I do appreciate as well, there is an ongoing issue which the committee is aware of. There is information, there is a degree of information I can provide about that in the public domain. If councillors want to go into it in more detail, I would need to go into private session because it relates to an individual. But what I can say to members who aren't aware, I'm seeking some further advice on how we handle the case because of some developments within it. And I'm meeting with the solicitor providing that advice on Monday morning. So I hope next week to be able to provide a more comprehensive update to members, and I might have to be a little bit reserved until I get that advice.
Thank you very much, Leah. Any questions to Leah on that matter? Okay, Councillor Bannister.
Yeah, I think that the work being done to get the national standards reviewed and brought forward is very important, and it's often been the concern of the council that the powers are very limited in terms of sanctions against those members that have breached the code of conduct. And so the work being done at a national level is welcomed because it strengthens those sanctions. But I do note in this report that the work seems to have been slowed recently. And I'm just wondering whether or not some effort can be made to write to the necessary government department to ask for the publishing of that timetable to bring forward those proposals. So just to stress the importance of the work, but the necessity of seeing that work brought to a conclusion sooner rather than later, Jane.
Thank you, Leah.
We potentially could write to the relevant Secretary of State asking for this to come forward. I think one useful thing that is happening at the moment is that a number of professional bodies are engaging with it and giving some feedback on some of the practicalities involved in some of the points that are being raised. I think one example is there's a lot of confusion at the moment about when a councillor might have the right of appeal to a decision, because in one place it implies it's when they've been suspended or disqualified, which seems a very reasonable thing to allow that to be independently reviewed. But there's another part of which implies that all decisions could be appealed, and that might create quite a laborious system unnecessarily. So we need to wind some of these things out, and it'd be useful we were able to do that before it hits legislation, and then it's a case of trying to trying to weave it in. So it's a useful phase at the moment, but some clarity would be very helpful.
Quite happy with that, councillor Madison. Difficult area, very difficult area. Right, any other comments on the standards activity, item 7? Right, we move on then to item 8, anti-money laundering policy. Over to you again, Nia.
Thank you, Chair. So this is one of the policy updates. I don't know whether I need to apologise to the committee because we didn't have this set in stone.